Alrighty. Well. Welcome back to the podcast. So this is gonna be a pretty queer topic, guys. But I need to finish typing something really fast so I can focus. It's a few seconds. And alright. So I'm basically trying to gather my thoughts here. I'm not a really romantic person, so this is not going to be a lot of romance in here. But I've kind of been blessed I think I'll be feeling this situation out for a long time, honestly, but just basically I don't know how to word this. I don't know. I really don't know. Like I guess I would say I'm pretty I've been enjoying a lot of engagement with an individual that it's kind of helping me put some things into perspective because I can kind of see kind of where my thought processes go. Now, this isn't like it's not really like a monogamous, like exclusive type of relationship situation. It's some other thing. And part of that partly makes things in some ways a little bit easier. The slight ease to things is that there's not really a lot of pressure to kind of have things go one way or another. But if I had to find a difficulty, that would be that the expectations, rules to things, they're not very clear cut. Like we're both pretty much very understanding that neither of us like owes the other anything. Like we don't owe anything to each other. We don't take that approach with each other. But I'm pretty impressed that it's a pretty healthy setup. It's just a little confusing. But I thought I was over it. I thought I was like, okay, like we kind of have been on a bit of a break. Just because we're both kind of in this transitional phase. So the last time we both talked, it was in this transitional phase of like we're both about to start new phases on things, and so I was kind of just like on my end, like, because I knew they would be busier. Like, I'm moving into things where I'm less busy. They're moving into things where they're going to be more busy. And so I was like, okay, like, kind of let me know, how it goes for you. And, I think I kind of wrongly interpreted something. Because, like, part of my head was thinking, like, okay, this person just likes the attention. But then I kind of realized, I was like, well, we have a really great connection. And so I don't really think that's what it is. And I really have a hard time finding people that I kind of feel really comfortable around, and also they kind of like try to get an understanding of me, and they're not moving so quickly, like in this kind of like scattered place, like socially, that I can't really get to know them. So maybe, I mean, like, initially I was pretty hesitant about some things because I was like, this person's lifestyle is kind of different from mine. Kind of slowed down, and I'm like, I don't think I can do that all the time. I do need my parties here and there. Like, I can't just like not do that. Like, that's not something that appeals to me. But I do kind of understand what they're doing, and it's best for them that way. So, I'm not gonna say don't do it, but yeah, there's just some stuff where I was a little like not fully understanding what was happening and kind of interpreting it as a completely different thing, where I thought that this person, like, the way that they kind of were talking to me or engaging back with me, the way that they were doing that was just only if I was like hitting them up. Like, I was kind of feeling like it was pretty much like a one-sided like thing. And I think that isn't an accurate interpretation. I just think I was feeling like that's what was happening. Like, my mind's gonna go to like not always worst case scenarios, but not always thinking about the options on the table. So that was kind of one of those, like, almost like not worst case scenario, but like an inaccurate assumption for sure. Like, I wasn't like asking them questions or talking to them about this. It was just assumptions I was making off my head, looking at one side of the situation. But yeah, like, on an intellectual level, on a spiritual level, like, they're not like religious or anything, but I think we definitely have the same views about like humanity and minorities and poverty and health and things like that. And we can have pretty open conversations about all that kind of stuff without it being, pointless or just like superficial fluff kind of stuff. And so, I usually appreciate that, I'm like, because I mean, like, not every, I don't know, I don't know, like, not every interaction with somebody has to be some deep thing, like, everybody doesn't have to like leave crying, or like, everybody doesn't have to, be like, hugging each other and like, having some kumbaya moment around the fire, everybody holding hands and stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be like intense, like, all the time. But I kind of do notice that I really prefer that. I prefer kind of those, like, deeper level interactions, or at least the people who can go there, even if they're not going to, or even if they don't want to, but people who can do that, that are comfortable with it to some extent. I think I have a hard time when it's like, I'm just talking about myself. Like, I don't care what other people are going to do. Like, they're going to react. They're going to act the way they're going to act. And I'm going to try not to get frustrated like I always do. But I'm really working on it. I'm trying not to get so irritated with things not being perfect when it comes to, like, social settings. But I notice, like, nothing's ever perfect. It's just some people I kind of, like, don't, like, I don't really care how things, like, not in a bad way, but it's like there's not much they can do that would get me, like, in a headspace where I'm like, oh no, like, I wish this would have gone this way or that way. It's kind of like, we just are who we are how we are, and that's that, you know. If they don't hit me a couple days, or if I don't hit them a couple days, or if we're just kind of, like, not really, like, too engaged, or if we're just, like, bullshitting on the phone or whatever, and just, like, laughing and stoned or drunk or whatever, and just not really doing anything, you know, that's still fun, you know. And I'm not gonna be like, oh, like, that, you know, that wasn't like a kumbaya moment kind of thing. But also, I'm female, and that's what we do, so it's kind of like I can't really just, like, not do that. That's just kind of how things work for me. But I do I do think that when it comes to certain I don't know if you would call it, see, it's hard for me to use labels for things, because it's like, I feel like, I know people say, oh, the labels are limiting, but they are. It's like, I don't like using words like situationships and friends with benefits and all that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like, you know, you can have friends that you're not dating, that there's something more going on, you know, but I don't think that really requires, like, an explanation. Like, it's just, that's just how it is sometimes. And I think often what happens is, a lot of times people don't acknowledge it. It just gets, like, weird. So I think in my life, it's interesting when those situations do get kind of acknowledged, where it's like, hey, what are we doing? You know? I do find that to be a little bit, like, I don't mind bringing it up, but it's like with the person. But the hard part is, like, explaining it to other people. Like, if somebody asks me if I'm dating somebody, it's like, I don't even know how to answer that question. I mean, the answer isn't strictly no. But, I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm not this person's main. So that's probably the best explanation I can give. And it's not nothing. But also, it's like, I don't have, like, full, like, I don't know, like, as far as, like, relationship expectations, like, the expectations are different for me or them. Like, you know, we don't, at least so far, I mean, we've known each other for, like, maybe over 2 years. So this will be the third birthday season or third birthday year that we would have in common, that we would have since we first met. And I don't think either one of us has spent a birthday with each other or cared to do so, or planned anything like Valentine's Day related, or things like that. So it's like, I mean, those are reserved for some other person, and that's fine. Like, I don't want to be necessarily like the main character in this series. Like, I don't. Like, I am fine with things the way they are. I think so long as we're communicating, I'm okay with it. But I don't even know what to say. Like, it's a good connection, but it's just like, it's kind of, I have maybe not the easiest time trying to explain what's happening. Like, so I have friends that I talk to about everything, but I don't talk to every friend about everything, if that makes sense. So I don't know, when it comes to like any kind of like relationships or whatever, like, I don't know what it is. Like, I tend to talk more to like some of my guy friends, I would say. I have a couple female friends that I'll kind of talk to them about stuff. Like, maybe two that I'm pretty comfortable. Like, I know where we stand with things, and it's not gonna get too confusing. Just the only thing that worries me with like females is kind of that like, I don't know. I kind of have a bit of a complex because I don't like people thinking I'm like into them if I'm not. And I'm not a flirty person or whatever, but it's kind of like, I also don't mind having like really deep, in-depth conversations about things with people. So I don't really know, like, I don't really know like what like, I don't really know. I feel like with some people it's easy, it flows easily, it feels fine. But with other people, it's like, I don't know how they're interpreting the situation, and I've had enough experiences where it can get awkward. And I don't know if that's on my part, if there's something that I'm doing that's like not normal or what. Like, I wouldn't know because nobody tells me, and I never know to ask, so I don't know. So I usually just kind of keep my distance from most people. That if I'm not like too comfortable with it, then like usually I kind of go by how their comfort level seems with things. Like, if I'm talking to them about dating, not dating them, but just dating in general and all that kind of stuff. Like, some people get a little weirded out talking about like dating and relationships and sexuality and all sorts of topics. And when I start noticing that it's a little awkward, then I start getting a little like awkward. And so it's like just not comfortable. So I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I don't really want to talk about this anymore. But yeah, I'm just like slowing down my kind of mindset on things. Because usually when I'm like in a dating space, I'm usually just running all over the place, and it tends to be very party oriented. Not with this person, but usually that's kind of like, yes, let's go and party. Like, I am down. But there's people that I that I people that I don't know. I can't treat everybody exactly the same, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. But yeah, it's also just interesting. Like my life is just weird. Um but yeah, I know there's a lot of pressure for people to be in relationships where they're leading towards marriage and um you know, child rearing households. Um like I studied psychology, as people know, and um you know, there are a lot of theories about, you know, different like life um stages. So one of them that always interested me was it Erickson? Dang. Um that's not what I was looking for. Erickson's psychosocial stages of development. Um Dang. So the stages um just basically, if you look at this Wikipedia chart, it has infancy, so under 1 years old is the approximate age range for trust versus mistrust. Um, so basically, that has virtues of hope. Significant relationship would be mother. Existential question: can I trust the world? And then events: feeding, abandonment. Those are basically what people under age of 1 years old experience. If you think of toddler ages 1 to 2 years old, am I gonna get like way off track with this? I'm already on a roll with it. Let's just go. The psychosocial crisis is called autonomy versus shame and doubt, shame and or doubt. The virtues say will, and then significant relationship with parents. Existential question: is it okay to be me? The events include toilet training, clothing themselves. Um, for the psychosocial crisis for early childhood, ages 3 to 6 years old, initiative versus guilt. The virtues are purpose, significant relationship with family. Is existential question: is it okay for me to do, move, and act? Events are exploring, using tools, or making art. Good old preschoolers. Um, for late childhood, ages 7 to 10 years old, we have industry versus inferiority, focuses on competence. Relationships would be neighbors, school. Existential question: can I make it in the world of people and things? That's a lot to be thinking about when you're like between ages 7 to 10. And then events, school, sports. So adolescence, identity versus role confusion is the crisis. And then focuses on fidelity. This is age ranges 11 to 19 years old. The relationships are peers, role models. Who I am. Sorry, I read that backwards. Who am I? Who can I be? And then social relationships are the events. Early adulthood, ages 20 to 44 years old. Intimacy versus isolation, focuses on love. Relationships, friends, partners. The existential question: can I love? And then romantic relationships. Ages for middle adulthood, ages 45 to 64 years old. Um, generativity versus stagnation focuses on care. Household, workmates, those are the relationships. Can I make my life count? And then the focuses are also, well, the events are work and parenthood. And then the final one, late adulthood, ages 65 and above. The focus is on wisdom. The crisis is called ego integrity versus despair. The relationships are humankind and my kind. Existential question, is it okay to have been me? And then the reflection is on life. So usually what we're taught with these stages is that people move through them, and I might do more on this, but that people move through them kind of like linearly. Now the actual, I mean, this is Wikipedia, so, you know, um, I'm reading from Wikipedia, so this is, I do this because it's easy and it's basic and everyone else can find it too, but, there's definitely more to the picture, more than what I can explain without having studied it recently, and I think I might actually study it because it sounds like a lot of good content could come from this, but I don't want to use my own life as an example for everything. But I think maybe that's why some people tune in, but there's certain things that I'm not going to be just like posting all over the internet. But that list is a very short list. At least in my opinion, it's a short list. I feel like I share plenty. And I'm not really like opposed to it, but I mean, I think about it. I'm like, who's listening? There's people listening that probably know who I am for sure. I know there are people for sure who know who I am, and then there's other people who don't. But I mean, I don't really want I don't want it to get too weird for my life, like, you know. But basically, people are taught that they move through these phases, and if you look at the questions, the existential questions, it's kind of interesting to assume that those would be linear. I feel like the existential questions are not linear, that people pop back and forth between them, but that's kind of my own thinking. I see where they're going with the questions, though. But you can get stuck with any of these issues. And for the people near my age range, where it's called early adulthood, it's like, that definitely, like, the whole love and intimacy versus isolation, friends, partners, the can I love and romantic relationships. But that kind of thing, I feel like it looks so different for everybody. I think we're all given a model through media and like heteronormative culture and stuff. We're given like a model for what that's supposed to look like. But what I haven't figured out yet is, does that same, like, is it nature and it applies to everybody, or is it like a cultural thing too? Because I feel like, yes, a lot of cultures do push for these different things, but as I've been, looking around more and noticing more, at least with my friend groups, the people who are, studying the longest or involved and focused in their career the longest, a lot of them aren't like actively trying to like start families, have weddings, have kids, newly, like in the middle of grad school. Like, usually people aren't trying to do that all the time. Some maybe are, but I mean, usually if you're in grad school during the cohort years where you would be expected, like, there are people who are younger, there are people who are going to be older, but yeah, I think it kind of depends what path you're on in life and certain things too. Like, if your career path doesn't really fit the mold with this stuff, like, yeah, you're definitely focusing on, friends, partners, relationships, and those types of things. But it's a little different in the society like where I live, where you're kind of forced to do so much career wise and education wise, and everybody around me is like, I don't I don't know if I could, like, most of the people that I find to date tend to be young professionals. Um, who knows what number career they're on, but they're always young professionals. And so that's something that I find interesting, is that they're young professionals. Most of them don't have children. Some do, some don't. Um, and a lot of them study, a lot of them are very intelligent, um, and focused and determined. And you see that a lot. And I'm not saying that parents aren't, but it's like parents, their priority is going to be their kids. Whereas those of us without kids, we're not prioritizing that necessarily. But then there are these other there are these other relationship levels that are kind of like, looked at, I would say. And there's this kind of like a teaching or a cultural explanation or a cultural teaching that you go from friends, and you find partners basically, but it's supposed to look a certain way. Like, you're supposed to get married and have a house and like do this whole wedding thing and do this whole other thing. You're not really supposed to do, like, what I do doesn't have a box in here. Like, like, I'd say I definitely have a lot of friends. Like, that's a big one for me. Like, I really like having friends. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I like my friends. Like, I don't know what else to say. But I do have time periods where I do like meeting new people. But people who kind of have the same energy almost, as in, like, they're on sometimes and they're just like, everyone's social, we're having a good time, and then other times we're all just like super busy, and sometimes those times align and other times they don't. But I like to see people like busy doing what they're doing, and they're not just like waiting for me, like all the time. Like, I've had households where I felt like that, where people were just like waiting for me to come home so they could just like, it's like, you're home finally. It's like, oh my God, like, I don't want to spend my energy with you. But, that, it was kind of different. But I feel like I don't really know people like that right now. And, I don't know, like, it's not really something I've ever seen in friendships that I've developed with people. But I kind of, I usually enjoy, you know, those types of, just kind of interactions. But yeah, I would say when it comes to other interactions, with different people in my life, like if I think about my past, like interactions with my mother were probably, I mean, I wouldn't say that me and my mother don't have a good relationship. That wouldn't be accurate. But our family isn't a big sharing family. Like, I don't know. I will say there are people in our family that don't like to share about their lives. Even to a point where you ask a certain question and they can't really give you an opinion. Like, unless it's like an opinion to say, oh, I'm right and you're wrong. It's more like they won't give an opinion, on certain stuff, or share their experiences about certain stuff. Like they just kind of don't. And then, yeah, so I would say when it comes to parents, yeah, I would say other traits that I've noticed tend to be, when maybe serious topics get brought up and then somebody just completely changes the topic. Like I've kind of noticed that happens a lot too. And I'm just kind of like, can we focus? It's like, okay, we were kind of getting somewhere with that topic. And then it's like, oh, somebody's like, oh, like, let me check the fridge and see if we have like more juice because I think we didn't go shopping for juice. And it's like, wait, like, we're in the middle of a conversation. So it's kind of like that kind of thing. I kind of noticed that it's like, sometimes people don't like to have serious conversations about stuff and they just change the topic to some other completely different thing. That kind of frustrates me to no end. Like, I mean, people have the right to not talk about whatever it is that they don't want to talk about, but I feel like it's not happening in that way. It's like, even if somebody else brings up the topic and then somebody just fully changes it, and it's like, it's not even it doesn't even have to be like a confrontational topic. It can be any kind of topic, but if it has like any seriousness to it, I do notice that happening a lot. But yeah, me and my siblings get along fine. We talk about like whatever, like, and neighbors, I definitely had neighborhood friends. I definitely had school friends too. Like, and then peers, role models, I had those too. And then, yeah, friends, partners, that kind of thing. But I don't know. Like, I don't really think I'm really looking for anything too serious. I mean, it's even hard to like think about doing something seriously when things aren't really lining up with, like, how are you going to get involved with somebody in a city you don't live in the same city, like, or you don't want to live in the same city that you met them in. I mean, it's kind of like you already know you're going to be like having a long distance thing, and like, why even start that? And then yeah, just all kinds of stuff like that where I just think like, okay, my life isn't settled enough to really be needing something serious. But even to think about wanting something serious, I think just because it's not really likely in the picture too easily, I just don't really consider it too much. Like, I don't do any kind of planning or problem solving around it. Like, I don't really care. I feel like usually so long as there's something going on, at least a little bit some of the time, I'm usually perfectly happy with that, and I don't really need much more. I very much like my life not to be too intertwined with other people's lives. I think better that way. Maybe not, but I think better that way. I have I can spend my energy more the way that I want to. But I don't know, it can be a little stressful in some ways when there's not really a lot of like specific rules towards things. Like right now, like I mentioned, like there's not a lot of specific rules for me, and I just kind of do what I do, but there's not really like a roadmap for it. So, but yeah, like I don't think, because I'm even looking at like past age 44 or whatever, like up into age 45, like, where it says that people are focusing on like household, workmates, that kind of stuff, work, parenthood. Um, I don't really know if people, I don't really understand those um, timelines. Like, I feel like people near 45, like, I guess maybe that does make sense if they went like a career path, but I feel like, like there's a certain structure that's like expected here, because it's like it's assuming that like, oh, there's parenthood involved because of the romantic relationships, but then it's like, I don't really know about that, like, and people focusing on work and parenthood, like if they're not focusing on work, if the person's life looks different from that, then what are they focusing on? And then household, workmates, things like that. Like, I feel like I feel like household and workmates, like, I mean, if you're just a couple, maybe, I don't think focusing on the household would be like, I mean, it's still going to be effort and energy, like, for sure, but, I mean, if you don't have kids and you're just like a couple with no kids, and then you just have your workmates and then you're a couple, I don't know, like, I feel like, at least culturally, it seems like the family goes missing somewhere, around age 20, like, the family goes missing, and then, like, around age 20, and they kind of don't pop back in. Like, you see earlier in life, there's, like, mother, parents, family, then it's slowly moving outside the house to, like, local stuff and, like, daily stuff, and then to peers and people that, are role models to look up to, and then it goes from into partners and friends, and then household and workmates. Like, the family's never a focus anymore, unless it's, like, your own household family, or partners that you're trying to maybe make a household with, which I don't really know culturally if that is how my life looks. Like, I feel like the parents are involved in all of it, as well as the siblings, as well as aunts, uncles, cousins. Like, I don't really have a life that's so separate from my family. Like, I don't talk about them. I feel like I talk about them plenty, but I don't talk about them too much. It's more so like events and, experiences, but I don't really talk too much about, my family members in too much specifics. But I've got a big family, large, huge family, a lot of multicultural variables in the family, and a lot of just different cultural things that don't really fit in a lot of the psychological models. So, the queer cultural part, as well as a culture that, still has family connections even later in life, a lot so. Like, it's I think just because my family isn't very, the elders in my family aren't too comfortable with, like, vulnerability and those types of things, like, it's kind of hard to have kind of good communication. Like, there's a lot of, like, tiptoeing around, like, all right, I know how to say this, because if I say this in this way, it's going to be an argument, and if I say it in that way, people kind of understand what I'm getting at. But it's not, for me, it's not the most efficient, to have to kind of tailor the way, I naturally speak just to make sure that other people kind of don't get like in their feelings in a certain way, and it just becomes some other problem, and it's like we never even started talking about the first thing in the first place. But I mean, and it could be anything. I'm not saying that like my family like sits around and argues all day. Like that's not even the case. It's just like there's so many cultural and generational factors that just make it easy for things to be difficult. I think that is kind of the easiest way I can explain it. It makes it easy for things to be difficult. And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think, I mean, I don't know, maybe there are grudges, but it's like everyone seems happy to be able to do what they wanted, what they need to do for themselves. Well, not really. That's not true. I think everybody has a bit of a struggle going on, but then also doing what they need to do for themselves and seeing kind of how that works. I think that is probably more accurately what's going on. But I don't know. Like it's not, I don't know. I don't really see it as like something that's completely going to be separate and like that I'm never going to be a part of like a family that's involved in like all these different aspects of my life. But yeah, I definitely don't focus my energy on like interacting with my parents or whatever. Like I focus much more of my energy on my interactions with friends and like meeting people. Like when I meet people, it kind of depends. When I meet people, I'm kind of mostly interested in just kind of seeing where things go. Like I met a couple people last weekend. Two of which I was like, okay, we're kind of vibing a bit, so I could see myself interacting with them again, and that probably will happen. And some couple other people that I got to interact with, where we don't usually get to interact too often. But we had a good time, and you know, like I feel like, you know, like I just kind of put things like take a mental note of this, of that good interaction with that person who potentially might want to make plans sometime, and then just leave it at that and just see where things unfold, like where I feel social, and happen to be in the same city and available and feel like hitting up a person that I don't know very well and try to kind of interact and get to know them better, like all of a sudden. So I haven't really like yeah, I don't know, like it's hard for me to explain how I socialize, but I've kind of had a lot of social opportunities just because of how I was raised. So it's taken me a bit to kind of realize that maybe not everybody's life is like that. Like it's kind of weird that like I think there was a little bit, not really an advantage, but like a positive side of being like connected to like a strict religious culture. Because I think that did kind of open up other doors. Like strict religious cultures do tend to have very strong social ties and, you know, very close-knit, you know, social, often like frequent social interactions. Like it's like a community of people that comes together on a very regular basis, versus like the more and more, like you can have that with any kind of community, right? But it's like, I feel like there's something about it where it's like people raise their kids in it and they want, you know, their kids to be like in that cultural system for like every part of their life, not so much exposed to all the other parts of the world that they don't agree with. And since there are so many parts of the world that they don't agree with, there's a lot that gets kind of not focused on, but the focus does tend to be like this social community atmosphere, which can be healthy, it can be toxic, it can be a combination. Usually you're going to have somewhat of a combination when you have groups of people. Like, it's never like 110% good all the time. But I do think, there are people who try really hard that the results come out really good socially. There are people who try really hard where the results just don't get them where they want to be socially. There are people who don't try, but just naturally they're nice anyway, so they don't get in anybody's way. There are people who don't try and they get in everybody's way, including their own. And then, there's like a spectrum on each of those levels. It's like you've got just a lot of variation, and just, people's moods even fluctuate based on like, what they've got going on in their life, or even within a 24-hour time period. Like if they've underslept, or, they're stressed out or whatever, it's like, goodness, like so many things impact other stuff. But, yeah, like I think that is one social dynamic that I don't meet a whole lot of people who have been kind of in those types of groups, but I usually do vibe really well with people that are from those types of groups. Like, it's like there's some kind of ease to it of just like, I know how to not break these rules. Like, it's just like socially you kind of just know how to be. I do find it difficult, even though I'm not like actively practicing like anything that makes any sense that I could like call it like a religion. Like I do whatever religion according to myself, I guess. Like I don't really know how to describe what I do, but and I don't really want to, but basically a lot of my I guess if you would call it values when it comes to like religion or spirituality tends to be like the social aspect of things. And it's kind of hard to say that because I'm not like always good at it. So it's like, okay, like, yes, clearly some days, I'm definitely in like a hit or miss kind of situation. Some days I'm totally missing. So, so I know like I'm not like perfect with it, but I would say if I had to pick one thing that I valued the most out of practicing different things, that would probably be one of the top on the list. Is kind of like my social circles. And I think people know that I value them. I don't like say it all the time, but I hope that that's how the energy is interpreted. Like, I don't know, like, I try not to be like obnoxious and just like getting on people's nerves. I think I can for sure. But the intention is usually pretty good. But yeah, I do think that religion to some extent helped with that kind of stuff because I definitely learned a lot about what I do or don't want in relationships, just by being socially interactive on almost a daily basis. Like I described my life before where it's like I can't remember pretty much between second grade and maybe like my first year of grad school where I wasn't doing something socially almost every single day because I was playing sports league Sundays, church Saturdays, school every day. Like, unless I was like sick, like I hardly stayed home. Like I hardly just like I remember I would have some weekends in high school where I would just be like, yeah, I don't want to go out tonight, but that was rare. Like, I went out, like, almost every single weekend, like, um, all the time. And, that's just basically how I lived my life. Like, I was never really fully at home all day. Like, yeah, I could veg out in front of the TV or whatever, but usually I just wanted to play guitar or, like, some kind of sport type thing with my brother, or, like, video games or something. Or I'd come back home and get back on the phone with friends, and we'd all just be on the phone all night on, like, 3-way, 4-way calls. Or we'd be, when the internet started getting popular, we'd just be online, like, in, like, AIM or whatever, and just, like, chatting on, like, instant messaging. I don't even remember what it was called. But, yeah, like, I grew up around a lot of that. So, in a way, it's like, when I see these types of things, I'm like, it works. I mean, like, I feel like when people read it, like, when I read it, I kind of know for sure what it's getting at, like, but there are definitely nuances, and, I wonder, I think my life it just doesn't easily fit into the boxes, but a lot of people have that situation. I'm not the only one. But yeah, I was just finding it interesting. That was kind of what was coming to mind with my situation with this person, where I was glad to be back involved. But we still have other planning to do. But I mean, I'm definitely glad to be back involved. Like, it's I didn't know where it was gonna go or what was gonna happen. So we're still figuring out what's up, but I don't really know. Like, yeah. Situation, it's the type of situation to be paced. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got going on, like, socially, though. Like, I don't really, other than just making plans with people, I mean, that's pretty much all I've really got going on. Like, nothing, I'm not doing too much in-person stuff lately, and when I do, most of the time I'm still by myself anyways. That sounded depressing, but it's on purpose. Like, I'm weird. Like, I do stuff like go places by myself. Like, I don't mind doing that. I get to do everything I want to do, and usually I know people nearby anyways, and so I'll usually just, like, go out to dinner with them or something, and hang out and, like, make plans nearby. But I'll be, like, snowboarding or something like that. So, like, I don't really mind. But, alright. It's getting late. I'm gonna stop this recording because it's going on for a really long time. And thanks for listening.